Hi, in this tutorial I'm going to go over how I painted those portraits with bold kind of colors. This one's the one with it's a guy with like a broken halo. The first thing I started to do was gather reference. I had like a portrait that I found. There's like a body reference and some like hair as reference. And right now at this stage, I start just sketching everything in there, trying to keep in mind of like facial anatomy as much as I can, keeping things proportionate to each other, and trying to add a little bit of a capture to the appeal from the reference. So yeah. So right now I'm working pretty loose, just getting in the major shapes, and just sketching and making sure it looks good. So here I start with the eyes. The eyes are pretty important to get right. At least for me, it's very easy to make them unproportionate to each other, so I transform them a lot. And now here I am drawing in the corner of the mouth. I looked up the name of it. It's called the oral commissure. It's like a detail that a lot of people, I would say, don't add when they're beginning to draw or beginning like observational drawing. But once you add that and you add that highlight, or even just adding the cavity with the highlight, the shadow and the highlight, I would say it adds another layer of realism into your drawings. Now just getting the eyes correct. Now I start masking out the hair, and now I'm sped up the video a little bit more, just getting everything more masked out. Now just working on, I just jump around a lot when I'm painting, so just so that I don't get bored of one spot. Now I'm still just focusing on like the anatomy, some more tweaks on the eye, just to make sure it's like a good proportion before I start painting. And in the reference, this person had like pretty defined cheekbones, almost to the point where it's kind of weird, but I tried to preserve that as much as I could. And then here I started playing with like a halo idea, but it was just in the beginning, so I didn't want to do it yet. I just made like, I think I made a shape, or I marqueed a shape, filled it in, and then I transformed it. And now this is the part where I start blocking in like colors. So I would marquee select or lasso select the whole thing, fill in a color with it. In this case, I filled in a warmer color of skin. The background is a cooler color, which is blue. And now I just start blocking in shadow. So literally the whole process of this, or like the idea behind it, is just marquee selecting or lasso selecting like a shape, and then using a soft brush and just doing a few strokes with pen pressure, like gradients, and then that's essentially it. And it's a lot of that, and I would just try and like I roughly have an idea of like where I want certain colors to be, but then the reference has colors already in this case. So I would look at the reference, then exaggerate colors where I want colors to be. So a lot of times I would push green more towards the cheek or towards the jaw area, just because there's more bone in your jaw, so there's less like blood veins going there, so it tends to be a little bit greener. Even like on the corner of your eyes, I tend to push blue a little bit more just because there's a bone right here. your, I guess your like where your eyebrows are, there's like that bone that, yeah, once again, it prevents as much like blood vessels to be there. But right now at this stage, I'm just painting in just like basic value shapes more than anything else, instead of like pushing in more exaggerated colors. Just getting more of that blue in, painting in some like ambient occlusion. So ambient occlusion is like where the I guess where there's a way of thinking about it is like the contact shadows, or like where light would tend to not, where light wouldn't be there. It's like a 3D term. I learned it from 3D, and then I tried to apply it in painting. So usually like corner of rooms would have like a decent amount of ambient occlusion, just because light tends to not bounce in that area as much. Right now I'm painting in like just more shadow areas, keeping in mind of like placing shadows, dark areas next to light areas, to exaggerate each other, so that there's more there's actual definition. Especially in this style, it's a lot of like blocky colors. You want to make sure each block is sort of visible, but at the same time, when you're like standing from far away, it has like a good read. So it can get a little tricky, and sometimes it can get pretty tedious, just because like you want to preserve that blocky feel, but at the same time you can't use that many gradients or lose that look. So painting in highlights, a lot of times when you start painting highlights, it'll start bringing the picture together, but it's also really easy to like jump too fast forward and just go straight for the highlights. So now I'm working on the eyes a little bit, just pushing it back more, just because I think the reference really like exaggerated the orbital cavity and the lighting was very harsh. It gave it a kind of like ominous look. Also, there's like a lot of bounce lighting from the top of the eyelids that I tried to capture. From when it hits like, I guess, your cheek area, some light would bounce up, or even in the space that this person's in, like light would bounce from the floor to the top of your eyebrow, or your lower eyebrow, where your bone is. And if you have a more exaggerated like bone right here, you'll catch more lighting over there. So just painting in more shadows, just getting the values correct, giving in. Here I started painting in some of the lip color, just so that it looks like he's alive. I think before it was very gray, so it looked like he was dead. Painting in some more bounce light, pushing values more. Now I'm starting to like refine certain areas a little bit more, so I don't feel as discouraged. But so far, right now, it's going in an alright direction. There I'm painting in I looked it up as well, it's called the vermilion border. That's where your lip and I don't know what this part is called, but where they intersect, there's usually a highlight right there. Once again, if you pick up on that when you're drawing, it'll definitely help like increase the realism in a way in your paintings, or you could even exaggerate it for your own, for like different types of stylization. But it's just a detail that definitely makes it look more interesting. So here I'm pushing the values more, pushing it back more, because I think I realized that it was darker than what I wanted. Since all the colors are relative to each other, as I'm painting, I could see like areas being too light or areas being too dark, and then pushing areas to the appropriate values. So that's why it's probably better in the beginning if I worked in a broader scope, so that I didn't need to like redo as much, but still figuring that out. So right here where the oral commissure is, there's also like right next to the cavity there's a highlight, so I'm just trying to throw that in there as well. The highlight, the color of it was a little bit like a desaturated kind of blue, which gave it a really cool, it's like a cool color, kind of like a cool bounce similar to the eyebrows. So that's the color that I was trying to get in there. It gives it more volume as well. Right now I'm starting to mask out the colors of the hair. So just getting more of the shape defined of the ear anatomy. That wasn't as important in this painting. I didn't focus on it as much, but it's still important to get it in a level that looks consistent to the rest of the painting. So more lasso tool, gradient, soft brush. Now here I'm trying to get the lighting symmetrical, since overall this was sort of symmetrical kind of figure. I wanted to make sure like both sides of the clavicle look consistent. Here I'm trying to like allude to some like shoulder anatomy. I'm jumping around just because, like, once again, like all the colors are relative, so once you start painting in one area, you kind of could see other areas that might not have been working as well with the other colors you had placed earlier. So throwing in some more color. Earlier I mentioned how I like to like use kind of like colors that I know that I prefer. So like on the cheeks, I do paint a lot of like warmer colors to give it a feeling of like life. Here the neck was too long. I tend to do that a lot, is paint really long necks or draw really long necks. So in painting, especially when you start rendering, you could really see all the errors when you start rendering out anatomy that might not be the most realistic. It starts looking really strange. Here I started working on the halo a little bit. I was trying to keep in mind the perspective of how like the halo would be thicker in the foreground than thinner in the background, like where it recedes. And now just filling it in, and then I removed the outline because who needs outlines? Here I'm lassoing in my color dodge. So in this style, normally I would use a soft color dodge, but because I wanted to keep that like polygonal like kind of look, I decided to just lasso my color dodge and keep that hard line instead of having those soft gradients. And now, once again, I probably would paint a softer blended style for these effects, but I decided to once again keep that hard edge look. So there's like kind of like flames coming out of the halo, and then I wanted to create an interesting silhouette, so I removed part of the halo ring just because it looks looks neater. And then I kind of made it like allude to the fact that maybe it's like a halo crown. So I try to like get that in there. And then here I turned off the effect layer just because it can get distracting sometimes, just so that I could go focus back on like what I need, which is the hair. So here I will start refining the hair. So the hair is a good way of doing it is just lasso all the parts that have like roughly the same amount of values, and just lasso it all first, and then with a bigger soft brush, just go through it with, like a stroke of the soft brush, and you will get it goes relatively fast. And with the lasso tool, you can get it pretty sharp looking, which has a really neat effect, especially for hair. So right here is just more refining the hair. And now I'm doing the edges. The edges is where it really starts to make this painting look more detailed, just because of like the finer details that you see, especially when it catches on the silhouette lighting. It makes it look more detailed than it actually is. The edges of the hair. And I'm just painting in some highlights. And then the other side of the hair, just trying to get some cool bounce on his left side, and then some more like silhouette details to like allude to like wisps of hair coming out of his head. And then I gave it like some of the red lighting from the halo. So the halo is also useful because it helps light the character. You'd have to figure out the lighting yourself, since the reference didn't have any of this like halo light, but essentially it acted as sort of like a rim light, so that I could just almost outline the edge of the figure with just this red light. It's always fun to paint in like an actual light source in your painting, just so that the lighting's not just coming from like a random spot. And now I am painting in a little bit more detail on the halo, just trying out different colors. And it's set to color dodge once again. And then just breaking up those like straight lines from the halo. And now I start this is a stage where I start just introducing like finer details, or like some colors that I wanted to exaggerate. So here I'm just toning down areas that looked, or toning up areas that looked that like it was missing. Oh, I'm also adding some of the light coming from the halo to catch on his shoulders. So here I'm starting to add like just random colors. I added like some cool colors, some warm colors for his nose, just because a lot of times like your nose tends to be a little bit redder. I think a painter that does that a lot is like Norman Rockwell. So I think that's where I kind of got some of that influence from. And now I think I took a break, so I'm not. Oh, and I came back. And here I'm just working on the chest, like a little bit lower area. So just painting in some highlights. There was like a reference I looked at it like, I mean, there's tons of reference of like, I don't know, bodybuilders or like really fit people, so there's never a lack of that. So you just find one and then just if you could find one with lighting that's similar to what you're going for, or pretty neutral lighting, those are always good, so that all you need to do is kind of like paint the color, like the not like kind of like a diffused lighting version of it, and then apply your own lighting to the painting. So here I saw that like the shoulders were a little bit weren't broad enough, so made the shoulders a little bit broader, and that's like the shoulder connection to the chest. Just because like before it looked like his shoulders were too thin. Now just adding in like some more colors. And this is nearing the end, so this is the part where I start introducing just random colors, just to make it look interesting. Just because sometimes it's really easy to like leave an area kind of flat. Now I'm adding like tiny like tertiary details. So if anybody looks at this painting up close, for some reason there might be a little bit more interest besides just like a first pass. If you have any questions about this tutorial, feel free to comment below. Also, you can subscribe to my Patreon to get new tutorials first, or new videos, new art stuff. It's at patreon.com/chinfongart. It'll be written in the about section below as well. So yeah, feel free to like, share, and subscribe. Thanks.